Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Find Your Wise podcast, where we are here to help you find one wise decision at a time. I'm Yvonne. I'm a financial coach.
I'm Indira, your leadership coach. Good. Hello, everyone.
Yeah, Mike's a little off today, so we'll see if we can catch it all. Indira's a little echoey, so we'll work on that as we go. It's all right. Now, I know that we normally start with some, thought-provoking question for everybody, but I don't want to waste any time today because we have a special guest, and I cannot wait to introduce him to you. Indira and I met him when we were all going through our John Maxwell Leadership Certification process, and we've kind of stayed in touch over the years, so we've invited him to be on with us today.
Yes, he's a Maxwell leadership coach, a speaker and trainer, and he has over 15 years of experience as a project manager. He's passionate about helping people and individuals in teams to unlock their potential through transformational coaching, engaging and training in all the leadership stuff. So he's the founder of Darren Mann Coaching Services. So we wanted to welcome Darren Mann.
Hey, Darren, thank you so much for being here.
Hello, Yvonne and Indra. It's so great to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks to you for joining us.
Yes. And of course, since I'm driving, I lost all my notes. So give me just a second. Oh, our audience knows us well at this point, but we are so good. So, all right, before we do any deep diving, which is what we really like to do, especially when we have a guest to get into the intricacies of what they're doing, I would really like to know a little bit more about your journey. How did you get started in this work, into coaching and everything else that you're doing?
Yes, thank you. Thank you for the question. I'll tell you my story. I got into leadership coaching. I was actually going for my MBA. I was in about the second term of my MBA, and I started reading a book by John Maxwell called No Limits. And I get finished with the book, and John mentions his coaching program. He mentions that at the end of the book. So I said, let me do a little research and check out John's coaching program. So I did, and spoke to a program coordinator within the organization, and told me all about the program. Make a long story short, I signed up. And I'm still doing my MBA. So I'm doing my MBA and I'm now a coach. So I start utilizing the materials. I start doing one-on-one. Actually, no, I started with Mastermind. So training, workshops, those kinds of things. And the very first Mastermind that I did was 15 weeks long, which they don't prefer you do, but I did the whole book of the 15 Invaluable Laws of Growth. And but I loved it. I really, really loved it. So I had a decision to make. Do I continue with my MBA and try to do coaching at the same time, or do I drop out of my MBA and just go full force into coaching? And I decided to drop out of my MBA, and I've been doing it now for about 3 years with the John Maxwell team. So that was how I got started.
That had to have been a really difficult decision.
Yes.
It definitely was. It was a difficult decision, but it was the right decision. And I've always learned in my life, at making other major decisions, that with my faith, my faith in God, He'll always watch out for me. And I just knew in my heart that it was the right decision.
Love it.
Yeah, I love that, because in reality, life is made. We build based on the decisions that we made. And if we put God as the center, it's always a way to go. And I remember that I always mention when I moved to the United States, I said, God, I don't know if it's the second time coming. If you put it in the way, it's because it's supposed to happen.
Mm-hmm.
So it really makes a difference. I know that we were reading some of your material about the 3 pillars of learning. Mm-hmm. And you talk about a lot about having lunches and conversations with people. Can you share a time when you have a lunch with someone and you learn something that helped that really helped you? And what made you stand out in that moment?
Yeah, that's a great question, Indra. And I had a learning lunch with an individual. This is not that long ago, actually. It was only about 2 months ago. I had this learning lunch. And I mentioned in the book that I used John Maxwell's learning lunch question, his learning lunch questions. And there's 5 questions. What are your strengths? What are you learning right now? What do I need right now? Who have you met? This is question number 4. What have you read or what have you done that has helped you become successful? And then the last question is, what haven't I asked that I should have? So I was having lunch with this individual and he asked me the question, or I asked him the question, because I was doing the questioning. I asked him the question, what do I need right now? And what he said was, you're not visible enough. You're not visible enough in the organization. You need to get yourself more visible. I'm a fairly new employee there, but he said, you need to get more visible, because he said, there is so much value that you offer to this organization, but not a lot of people know it. And that was sort of like a blind spot revealed to me, because I didn't even know that I was doing that. So, I mean, there's been other learning lunches as well, but that's been a really impactful one for me.
That's interesting, and I love that they were able to give you that advice. And that's why it's so important to have those connections from outsiders looking in on us that maybe don't necessarily have an invested interest in us, that can give us the honest truth. Because I know sometimes when we are talking to people like family or something, oh, everything's great, everything's fine. So that is really wonderful.
And especially I was going to mention in the work environment, it's important to have someone that can even provide you those insights, because it gives you perspective of things that, or open your eyes. And I love that phrase that he mentioned, you're not visible enough, because sometimes we think we are doing the best we can, but the promotional part is also important, that others can see the value that you are offering in the organization. Love that.
Well, speaking of promotional, I want everybody in the audience to know that Darren's information to contact him, get his, his book and everything else will be available in the description of the video. So you can go there to look more into him. But I know, Darren, the last time that we were talking, you and Darren and I got together, that you were telling us about how you and your wife ask each other a few questions every night at dinner. So how has that kind of helped your relationship and shaped how you lead and how you learn?
Great question. Maybe I know the audience is probably curious about the question, so I'll tell what the questions are, then and then I'll answer your question. So there are 3 questions every night that my wife and I ask one another. We've been doing this, I would say, for about close to 10 years. Wow. We sit down for dinner and it takes around 10 minutes. So the questions are, what are 2 things you're thankful for? What is one area of improvement? And what is one thing that made you smile today? Those are the 3 questions. And I would say that I've learned, this question is going to take me some time to answer, but
take your time. This is fascinating. I love this. Like, more people need to hear this.
Yeah. So through these conversations, and I'm a very busy person. I have a business. I have a full-time job. I'm a pastor. I have a lot of different things on the go. But what I do is I make sure I prioritize those, our dinner times together every night. I rarely miss dinner with my wife, because this has become so important to connect with her during dinner to see how her day was and how mine was. And I would say that what I've learned through this is that we celebrate together. So she will share something that made her smile, and then it calls me to celebrate. I'll share something that made me smile, and it calls her to celebrate. And it's, like I said, really a way to connect. I would say the thing that I learned the most, though, is how to be vulnerable. That would be the thing that I learned the most. And the second question addresses that. The second question is, what is one thing you'd like to improve? And when you answer that question, you're going to talk about some area where you struggled that day, right?
Yeah.
And so and that question has unlocked so many things, so many I guess avenues in our marriage where we have, like I said, grown a lot closer because of that vulnerability and because we've been able to be honest with one another. And I think that's one of the challenges in relationships is that honesty and that openness. And so I think that's what I learned from all of this.
Yes, and especially, I don't know, women, we are built to be open and share. For men, it's a little more difficult. So you and your wife have created an environment to develop and openness and that vulnerability. That also what it does is to make you closer every day.
Well,
That's
I love
fantastic.
you focus on the positive also, because I think so many times, especially if we've had bad days, we're having a lot of pressure at work, we come home and the first thing we want to do is just dump on our partner and talk about all the horrible things that happened to us today in hopes of releasing some of that and maybe getting some sympathy. But when you do what you and your wife are doing, when you turn it into something positive and you focus on the good, that just reframes everything in your perspective. And I think that we need so much more of that, not just the connection. Absolutely. I think we need more of that also, but to try and keep things positive and building in that direction. Also, when you, like you said, you're vulnerable with each other and talking about something you can improve on, not only are you being vulnerable, but then you're opening yourself up to getting help and support from your partner. And I think that's just fantastic. That's really exciting. I really hope people listen to that part. If for myself, that's what you take away from that. I think that's the connection, the human connection, especially with our spouses, somebody that we are, bound to is a beautiful thing if we can improve on those.
Yeah, I really love that. And the first time we were talking about it, we said, wow, that's fantastic. Yes. Continue talking about your book. And again, the book is called The 3 Pillars of Learning, which has fantastic insights. One of the things that you mentioned is about patterns and how you can use different tools like DISC and StrengthsFinders to identify patterns in people. What's one thing you've discovered about yourself by paying attention to those patterns?
Yeah, great question. One of the things that I've done, that I've realized, and I've taken many different personality assessments, Myers-Briggs, StrengthsFinders, DISC. But one of the things that I've come to realize through doing StrengthsFinders recently was that my strengths, my top 2, now StrengthsFinders breaks it into 4 categories: relationships, strategic, influencing, and execution. I have 5 of my top 10 strengths that are in the relationship category. And 3 of them out of the top 10 are in strategic. And so I've come to realize that it's important for me to build relationships, and that is one of the ways that I influence. That's one of the ways that I'm able to get a lot of things done is through relationships, because that's a key strength of mine. Yeah. And then the strategic side is more about being a visionary, seeing the future, helping a team to go in the future. And I think the relationship side of it as well is about, I love building teams. You guys mentioned that at the beginning of the call. I like to see teams built and to see them built from the ground up, and then to see them functioning in harmony together. That's one of the things that I love to do. And I think it plays to my strengths of being relational and strategic. I'll share a quick story with you.
Sure.
I'm on the board at my church, and one of the things that I noticed was that there was not a lot of closeness in relationships when I came onto the board. And I said, I don't like this. And so what I did is I approached the pastor and I said, hey, I have an idea. I would like to do something to help the board, connect better. So what I did is we started to do a 10-minute leadership teaching at the beginning of every board meeting. And what that did is it began to bring some closeness. We also incorporated meeting one-on-one. After every meeting, you have to meet with one of the board members. And so that also fostered a connection. And now it's changed tremendously from when I first came on the board. I've been on the board now for, it's going on 6 years.
That's nice.
Yeah. Are those things that you can implement like in any essential any leadership group, like even if it's a like community leadership or school boards, anything? I mean, is that something that you could work with them on? Like do you have a program set up for that, or?
It's not necessarily a program. It was just more, actually I leaned on some John Maxwell team members, and it was just something that I said, well, actually, let me go back a bit. The first thing that we did is my pastor and I met for 5 weeks. We did a mastermind on one of John's books called The Self-Aware Leader. We went through that book. We had questions, and we had just a really good discussion. At the end of it, I said, hey, the board needs to know this. And so then I proposed, maybe we can do a 10-minute leadership teaching at every board meeting. He was in agreement. So
I like that.
Yes, that's good. Because you maybe to involve the board to the direction that the organization is taking. First is the awareness and the education part. So you start with one of the members that help you promote to disclose to the rest of the team. That's something that people can also implement in their work. And even some things that we can have those type of discussions in our personal life as well. Not necessarily focusing on leadership, but I'm thinking about what you mentioned about with my kids during dinner table. What type of conversations we can bring that can help us to give them the values and the structure that they need to be the person they wanted to be when they grew up.
Yeah, absolutely. I love it.
Yeah, for sure.
That you have previously mentioned Kobe Bryant and how he learned by watching Michael Jordan very closely. So how can we use that same approach by like watching and learning from others so that we can grow in our own lives?
Yeah, that's great. I've been on a number of John Maxwell teachings and calls, being that we're part of his team. And one of the things that John said is that the number one way that he grows is through mentorship. That's the number one way that he grows. And I thought, wow, he reads, he does a lot of different things to grow, but the number one way is through mentorship. And so for me, I've started to get the learning lunches. I do those once a month. And that is a way for me to learn from some leaders that are further ahead of me. And another thing that I do is I have a mentor, I have a coach, I have different people and I have a counselor as well. I'm not afraid. I'm not ashamed to mention that.
Absolutely.
And so that having these different voices that can speak into my life and help me see those blind spots has been a tremendous asset to me, because when you try to go on your own, it makes it very challenging to be able to succeed at anything, right? We need other voices to speak into our lives. The Bible says this. It says, in a multitude of counsel, there is safety. And so I've learned over the years, through some trial and error and through some setbacks, trying to do it on my own, that I need other voices to speak into my life.
Nice.
Wow. I love
that you're talking, because normally if we're in any sort of leadership positions and we do lunch and learns, or if you're running your own business, we are the ones that go to groups of people at lunch and learn and we're teaching. I love that you are using that opportunity for you to be essentially the student and learn from somebody else, that you're asking them to do that. I think that is fantastic. I think that needs to be done so much more often.
Yeah.
Oh, I love it.
So I think you mentioned some of the things already, but just to, how do you think we can become more intentional about who, what, and how we observe people?
How do we become more intentional?
Yeah,
that's another great question. I appreciate all of these questions. I think we become intentional.
Be ready.
Yeah, I'm ready. I'm ready to go. I think we become more intentional. One of the things that I speak about in the book is body language. So open body language is, you're speaking to a person and they have their hands open, right? Whereas closed body language, it could be they're crossing their arms, they're looking down, they're doing something else that they shouldn't be doing while you're having a conversation with them. So I talk about in the book good body language and bad body language. So that's one of the things that I would look to is see what their body language is like. Are they making eye contact with you? Are they, like I said, are they distracted by something else? And I mentioned there's 10 that I mentioned in the book, and I've given you a few here. But I think those are the two key is eye contact and and just them paying attention to what you are saying to them in that conversation. Body language is a big one. Personality assessments is another thing that I would look to as well. It's funny. My wife is in the DISC personality assessment. She's a CS, which means that she's detail oriented, and I would just say she's detail oriented. That's the big part of it, and detailed and task oriented.
Yeah.
Whereas I'm an SI, and SI is relationships, and task sort of second. So I'm a very relational person and influencer. So my wife and I, we didn't always see eye to eye, and we still don't see eye to eye sometimes, but because I look to the relationship first, she looks to the task first. And so that has created some tensions, but because we understand that now, I can understand, oh, she's making this decision because this is who she is, not because she wants to be in conflict with me, or she doesn't, because she wants to get into an argument with me. That's not the reason. This is just the way that she has been created. That's the way she's wired. Yeah. And I'm wired in the way that I'm wired, right? And so that has been revelatory for me in relationships at work, in relationships at church. If I can understand what a person's DISC profile is, and DISC is very easy to understand. There's only 4 letters. D stands for direct, dominant. I is for influencer. S is for steady, stable, and C is like a conscientiousness, which is detail oriented. So if you can understand those things, you can really build better relationships, because you're not going to be, you're not going to have tension with people, because you're going to know, oh, okay, this person is this. That's why they are doing it this way, or that's why they're so direct. Yeah.
I love DISC. All 3 of us are DISC certified, and I love it. And it's not only useful, like you said, in your relationship with your wife, but it can definitely be used in work situations, even if just the leadership takes it, so they understand their workers better, or each other better. But if you can do it as a whole team, you can place employees in better positions of where they might be more adept, not just where you've put them. You can use it in family situations. I can use it, with my financial coaching, dealing with couples who are having communication issues on how they're spending money. DISC is so valuable in so many aspects. And you can even just do it for yourself, to learn yourself a little bit better and understand, why am I doing what I'm doing? Why do I react this way? It's really a valuable tool. So I love that you brought that into it. I really do.
Yeah. And it's very important, because at the end, the way that we're going to communicate with other people is through conversations. And that's why we found that these 3 pillars of learning was so impactful, because one of the main things is about conversations, and it really reflects how you can communicate better with people and understanding where they're coming from. Because sometimes we take it personal, and it's not personal. It's just because that's the way they communicate, and that makes a significant difference.
Yeah. Well, like Indira said, one of the pillars that you were talking about is conversation. The others is education and observation. So which one of them has made the biggest difference in your life for you?
Being that I'm a relational person, I think conversations is probably the one I lean towards the most. Like I said, I do have mentors and coaches and those kinds of things from the observation pillar. And of course, I love education as well, but I would say conversations. I learn the most through conversations, because I'm a relational person, and I learn the most through relationships.
Love it.
Yeah.
Nice. See, that's why it's so important to know yourself.
Yeah.
Another reason right there.
That's right.
And in your leadership work as a project manager, I imagine that you have faced many challenges. How those struggles help you to passion about coaching and helping others to grow?
I think you got cut off just a little bit.
Yeah,
there,
you got
Indira.
stuck there, Indira.
I think we
there
have.
you go.
Yeah.
Try again.
We all miss each other. So are you there?
Yep.
Yes.
I can hear.
Okay, perfect. Sorry about that. I don't know what happened.
Internet.
So I was saying that you face many challenges in your job as a project manager, and how those struggles lead you to discover your passion for coaching and helping others to grow.
Yeah, great question. For me, I think I've been in project management for 15 years, as you mentioned at the beginning of the podcast, but I've been in the IT industry for 30 years. So I've worked for a long time in this field. And, I believe that the one thing that has helped me or that I've learned, I've had, some failed projects. I've been let go in organizations, been laid off. So I've been through a lot of setbacks in my career. And I think that positions me well for coaching because there's not a lot that I don't, like if someone mentions something, it won't really surprise me because I usually have a story that I can tell when I'm coaching someone, right? So I think that my struggles that I've had in my career as a project manager, even before a project manager, has helped to set me up as a great coach because I'm more empathetic. I can understand what the individuals are going through, what they're experiencing. So it's not me just asking questions. I can ask questions and really empathize with the other person.
Yeah, and that makes a difference because you just don't, like you said, not just asking questions, but you are you already was in a similar position that person is today, that give you some tools that can help to do better understand and
That's
also
right.
to relate with you and connect with you better.
Yes.
Good.
Now you were talking about that you prefer communication. You think that that's where you've got most of your learning. So do you think that maybe listening is an underrated part of learning?
Extremely underrated. I think active listening is so critical. You learn a lot just by, and that's part of the observation pillar, is by listening, is by being in a room. I'll share a quick story with you. Tim Story, who your audience may know or may not know, you can look him up. He's a pretty popular coach. And a few years ago, he spoke at a John Maxwell coach. And one of the things that he said is, he was in the room with John Maxwell, and I believe Deion Sanders was there, and there were some other prominent leaders at this conference. And he said in the conference, he said, I went into the room not to speak, but to observe, to listen. He said, because I'm around these great leaders, I want to learn from them. And I thought, wow, that's pretty profound. Not a lot of people, they want to be heard, they want to speak, but he said, no, I'm going to go in and I'm going to listen. And the reason that he was willing to listen is because he wanted to learn from these prominent leaders. So I would say listening is so critical, it's so important, and it's one of the things that I try to do. And I think just having the learning lunches, asking the question and listening to the answer helps me with that. And I actually record those sessions as well so that I can go back and look at the notes and, review the notes again and that kind of thing. Yeah.
And also that you mentioned that it doesn't matter how high you elevate yourself in your process of learning and growing. People, as they're continuing the growing process, some people are also ready to continue learning from other people. It doesn't matter in which stage you are in your life, and that also helps you in the process of continuing education. That is one of the pillars that you mentioned.
Yes, right. Yeah, the education pillar.
But sometimes people stayed just with the basic education, with the traditional education. So I would also like to understand, in your opinion, what is one thing that the traditional education gets wrong about real world learning?
Oh, wow. That's a pretty deep question.
We can figure it out together because
many huge lobs at you, but this one is good.
Yeah, this is a good one. What is one thing, let me make sure I understand the question. What is one thing that the education system gets wrong?
About real world learning.
About real world experience.
Yes. And I have 2 kids, and we have some deep conversations all the time. Because what they see in social media today, it doesn't matter if you educate yourself or not. So
I think one of the big things, one of the misconceptions that I've seen is once you get your degree, you're done with education, right? So once you get your bachelor's degree, your master's degree, your PhD, you're done. but learning is lifelong. It's not just about getting a degree. It's lifelong. And so I think that's one of the things that I've seen where people are saying, once I get my degree, I'll be all set. I won't have to read anymore. I don't have to do, no. That's where education starts. Yeah. It's you're starting with a degree. Like, it would be foolish of us to say that I got my high school diploma, so I'm good now. I don't have to do anything else. It's just the first step. Then university is the second step. But the lifelong learning, and so one of the things that I love about being on a John Maxwell team and what he says is that every day I read. So he has these 5 things. I can't remember the 5, but he talks about every day he reads, every day he writes, every day he files. He files what he's reading. And I think, having that type of habit helps you to be a lifelong, continuous learner. You can still take continuous education courses. Yeah. You can still do all the formal education, but I believe that learning should be a daily habit.
Yes. And you mentioned another important word, habit. If we make our learning as a part of our habit, it really makes a difference.
Yeah. I read 20 minutes a day.
Love it.
Sorry, I'll just add one more thing to that. I read 20 minutes a day, and I reflect on that probably about 15 minutes. So it's about 30 to 40 minutes that I'm actually actively, and I do that on a daily basis, where I read, like I said, 20 minutes, and then about 15, 20 minutes, I'm reflecting on that information. And that's what really changes you, is the reflection. The reflection is what really gets it inside of you, and you change from that. Because you can read and you can get a lot of content and you can feel good about yourself, but then the next day you don't remember what you read.
Yeah. Exactly. So you have talked about 2 good habits. That the one is the reading and reflecting, but also the monthly lunches that you have with people that helps you to interact. Is there any other habit that you have that will help us also to continue our process growing?
That's a great question to ask me, because I have a lot of habits. And I think I've read somewhere that your habits is what makes you, right? It's those daily habits that you do that makes you the person, the woman or man that you're meant to be. I would say it's a secret weapon that a lot of people don't know about. I'll share a quick story with you, because I like to illustrate through stories. This was about 13, 14 years ago. I was doing a lot of traveling. So I was traveling for my job, and I live in Vancouver, Canada, and I was traveling to Tucson, Arizona, and I was going to Tennessee. I was going all these different places. And traveling, you don't always eat the best. And I didn't really understand how quickly you could put weight on.
Yeah.
And so within 6 months, I'm not kidding you, I probably had gained about 30 pounds. Wow. And then within a year, I had gained maybe 60 pounds. I found it hard getting in and out of my car. I was really struggling. And I said, you know what? I've got to change this, because this is not good. So what I did is I just started walking 10 minutes a day. That was it. I'm going to walk 10 minutes a day. That's it. And I'm going to do that for at least 3 months. And that's all I did, 10 minutes a day. And then after that 3 months, I said, you know what? I could do a little bit more. So I upped it to 15 minutes. And then after 3 months after that, then I added some water. And I said, okay, I need to drink more water. So I started drinking 8 glasses of water a day. And then my wife says, you know what? We need to cut our portion sizes down. So we did that. So why I'm saying all of this is those small, consistent habits is what changed me. It wasn't, a lot of people think that if I do this big thing, if I go and I work out for 60 days, then I'm going to get in shape and I won't have to worry about it. No, it's those small, daily, consistent habits over a period of time. That's what's going to change. That's what changes us.
James Clear would approve of your habit stacking.
Yes, there you go. Habit stacking, that's what it's called.
Yes, and that consistency. Yeah, and that's one of the hardest part for people, because we start too high and then we get disappointed. Yep. But if you start small and then continue adding, and like you even mentioned, stacking habits, because once you have one set, then another one on top, Yeah, it really makes a difference.
Well,
So were you able to lose your pounds?
I lost.
Oh, great.
In, I think it was about 8 months, I had lost maybe 70, 80 pounds. I have a book about this as well. It's called Choose Health.
Okay.
How's it
And it
called?
talks about my journey, and I have a picture of myself in the book. It's called Choose Health.
Well, make sure you give us that information to add to the description so that people can find that too.
And I talk about that in the book. I talk about my journey, and I think I lost 70 pounds. I think it was.
Nice.
Yeah. That's nice. Pretty nice.
Yeah.
Well, in all of your conversations that you're having with people, do you ensure that those conversations are opportunities for growth, or are they just for information exchange? Or do you have is like everything you do purposeful?
I would say so. Yes. Okay. I would say everything that I do is purposeful. So do you mean like the learning lunches or any conversation or just regular
most of your conversations? I mean, I'm sure you have some just everyday conversations with people, but are you mostly always on track to try and ensure that somebody is going to get some piece of information that can help them personally grow with when you're having a purposeful conversation, I guess you could say?
I've been studying, doing personal growth, leadership, studying the Bible. I've been doing this for a number of years, over 20 years. I've been studying about leadership. And so it always inevitably comes up, like if I was in a conversation the other day with two ladies that I work with, and they were talking about diversity, equity, inclusion, and they had a book that they were reading and they were going through, and they were, mentioning that, and then somehow it got back to leadership, and I was talking about, well, as a leader, these are things that are important to me, and I was able to talk about my values. So for me, when I'm having conversations, it always comes back to this. And by the way, my values are courage, growth, legacy, teamwork, and empathy. Those are my top 5 values. And that's what I lean on when I'm going through hard times. Am I being courageous still? Am I growing? So that's why I'm growing on a daily basis. Am I leaving a legacy? So for me, you mentioned about purpose, Yvonne. I want to leave something for the next generation. I want to leave this world better than I found it.
Yeah.
And so legacy is so important to me as well. And of course, the teamwork, we talked about that. Yeah. So that's a value. And then empathy. Yeah. And that's a relational component.
Mm-hmm. And it's so important. Like you said, once you have your values clear, it's like your compass. It helps you understand if you're in the direction that you want to go. Love that.
Oh, it aligns you too, Indira. It aligns you to know, okay, wait a minute. I was at an organization and my values didn't align, and I thought something's not right here. Yeah. And so I was able to kind of look and say, no, it was great at first, but now I'm realizing that this particular organization, they brought in a new leadership team, and I said, my values don't align. And I felt it almost immediately. Wow. Yeah. Because you can tell when your values don't align with someone else. So that's one of, as you mentioned, that's a compass for me.
Yeah, that's fantastic. If you enjoyed this episode, join us next week for part 2, as we go deeper, unpacking real life lessons, unexpected insights, and continue the powerful moments that shift your perspective.
Absolutely. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this with somebody else that might enjoy. Bye.
See you next time.